So I got a new coil, had it painted. Here's the wires that came with it. These are your typical, aftermarket wiring. These are original. I pulled these out of a new old stock package. They're still a little bit stiff, but you can see the difference. These screw in to the tops of the spark plugs. And front and rear. The only thing that's what's not correct on these is this should be CAD plated, not chromed. So I've had good luck with some of these, and I've had horrible luck trying to get them in. There is a process you can do where you heat up a coil, you put the battery on it, and you actually heat it up, and it softens the inside, which allows the spark plug wires to go in easier. But this one's I did a test fit and alignment, and they look good. So on the inside of here, a little bit down, probably 3/4 of an inch down, there's a little pin that comes up, and inside this wire there's some copper cable inside. So you just want to make sure you get that pin and the cable aligned. So I put it in and I test fit it, and just to make sure that the pin and the cable are in the right position. So after reading one of the books on some of these wiring, the back goes to the front cylinder. So the back of the coil goes to the front of the cylinder, and the front of the coil goes to the back of the motor. So back cylinder of the motor. So we're going to put this in. Kind of squeeze it in there. There's a seal here. Get that in. Simply tighten up. We'll put the front one in. You want to make sure you get it on really good. That way if you're going down the road, it bounces around, it doesn't come out. And get the rubber in position. There we go. And that's how you install some coil wires on a coil. This one was an easy one. I've had them where I've had to take some of the material off because it's just the inside diameter of the where the pin is, and the outside diameter of this coil wire it's just too tight. You can't get it in. So there we go. So we're going to continue with some work on this bike. We're going to put the coil on. 6-volt coil. We already got the 2 clamps and backing plate already installed, and I'll bring you and show you closer hand of that. And basically all the little red markings are things we have to still do. So let's continue on. So on the pre-1948 Harley 45s, they had a clamp system where there's a clamp that goes around the C-post tube, a couple brackets that are concave that go onto the against the C-post. Then you got this plate, and then you have the coil goes on, and then you have these two mounts that they go behind. So this mount will go behind here. It's threaded, and then you can bolt the coil on. We already got some of it pre-wired, so this goes to the back of the coil, it goes to the front of the coil. And you can see some of the wirings already like run. It's not finalized or anything. This is kind of interesting because this is a, it's got, you see the Bakelite? So this is all set up. There's some Bakelite non-conductive, non-metal conductive components that allow you to run wiring to it, and yet it doesn't ground out to the frame. And if we look on this side of the motor, so we got the clutch all assembled. Here's the skid plate underneath. So we're quite a ways along on this. The front crash bar is installed, battery box is installed, and a few other components. So we're just going to continue with assembling this bike. I wish I would have had a lot. Well, I wish I had all of the previous assembly that I had done prior to my YouTube. So you could have seen it come right from a frame all the way up. But we'll do that on the next bike because this won't be our last. So here's a quick little trick I used to get those plates in behind here. Take a zip tie, go through that hole, and have that the stub on the other side, so when you pull on it, you're putting pressure against it, which gave me the chance to tighten up this bolt into the bottom half of that hole. So now what I'll do is I'll tighten this one up, and then I can pull the zip tie back out and then put the bolt in there. And if you're wondering why wouldn't I have gone and bolted the coil to this plate and then put these U-bolts and all that, because it's just as tough. It's either you deal with these bolts or you deal with these bolts. There's not a lot of room in here, so it's kind of one or the other. It's really tight. So that's where we're at. Well, after some cursing, we've been able to get the coil all mounted. The trick with the zip tie worked really well. You can just see how hard it is to just get my fingers in here. And if you put the coil on before the battery box, you still have to get the battery in, etc., etc. I didn't have the coil. I had to get a new one. The last two I had, they weren't good, so I had to get a new coil. So I wouldn't have been able to do it before the installation of everything else because I was already at that point. So the next order of business is we're going to wire up our coil here. That goes there, that goes there. Pre-marked these from before. I'm going to eliminate, there's supposed to be a switch here, a blackout switch. I thought I had one, I don't have one, so I'm eliminating that. This one's not going to be super correct, and it's just, I don't have the switch at this point anyway. I can always wire it in later if I do get one. So we're going to just wire it up as normal and put the two wires to the coil here. And then we're going to put this mount on. So it actually goes this way. So this is the mount for the air cleaner, the military oil bath air cleaner. So you see this mount here. It's under there. Oop, I'll try and get you. So we got to take this bolt out, slide that underneath, and put it back on. And then there's a couple clamps right here. Go around the frame and then hold that all in position. So on a correct restoration, this would all be Parkerized or CAD plated. The bolts also, or the bolts and the hardware. They didn't want anything shiny in World War II. You know, you don't want to attract attention to yourself. Something that could light could play off of, and the enemy sees you because of something shiny. So that's why everything was like a flat green, flat black. Everything was like a flat color, so it didn't reflect. So now we're gonna get this one bolt underneath here off, and get this mount for the air cleaner installed. It's always fun taking apart stuff that you put together so long ago. But that's what it is on these old bikes. When you're building them, you put something on, you take it off 10 times because a variety of reasons. That's all part of it. I do less of it now than I did before because I've done this a few times, so a bit more experience. You know, I don't know how many times I had to take apart all my wiring harness by the dash because I ran it on the wrong side of the frame. Just simple things like that. I got to loosen up the coil that I just finished tightening because I just don't have quite enough clearance to get the bolt out. All right, stay tuned. So in order to get this bolt out, I had to remove that bottom bolt on that I had tightened up on the coil, because I have to get this bolt behind the coil to get it out, which is what I just did. And now to find that washer that just fell somewhere, always behind here. It always has to go behind something, you know. So now I can put the coil back on, because once I put this mount on, makes it even more difficult to get all the bolts on the coil. So I'm not going to put this bolt going down. I'm going to have to put it going up this time, just so that I can tighten the coil, then put the mount on. So after taking the coil off, retightening everything nice and tight, we're going to start installing this mount. Again, kind of need a third hand just to get all this held in position. So I put a couple zip ties to hold that in position, so I don't have to hold it at the same time. I can just concentrate on getting the hardware on. Not a lot of room. There we go. So what's interesting is so these air filters are actually oil bath air cleaners, so they actually hold some oil on it, and as the air passes through, the oil kind of collects any debris, any dust, and just cleans the air. Tractors used it for years, you know, until the filters became so much better than back then. Like an original air filter of that era was basically copper wire kind of strung together in a mesh. So you can imagine how, you know, inefficient that was, as opposed to like your normal car filters nowadays or motorcycle filters. They're just they weren't that great, but that's what they had. That was all that was developed at the time. So with the oil bath, it really prolonged the engine life. You're not sucking in any debris, and there we go. So now we can get these two mounts put in to position, and then look at getting the air filter, oil bath air filter installed. So everything's retightened. Mount's nice and solid down here. All that's done. Wiring's all nice and cleaned up. Had to reroute some wiring here just so it looked better, and I gotta still tighten it, but it just it'll keep it all away from the head so nothing gets burned. So we'll cut these temporary zip ties off, and here are the two mounts. So you can see similar in shape, but I don't even know if they're like if this one's bent differently, but this one goes here, and this one goes here. Maybe not, maybe it's the opposite way. Either way, we'll get it all figured out. So I already got some of the hardware all picked out. So in case, again, I'm not going 100%, perfect on this one, correct. If you look at the bolts I got, these are just your standard, bolts from any hardware place. This one here, this is more correct. This one's got the 1036 or 1038 CP on the bolt, and this one doesn't. This is a correct bolt, but that only matters to certain people, and for this bike it doesn't really matter to me. So, been playing around with this for a little bit. Got this pretty much where I want it. It's pretty straight. I think it could get a little bit straighter. But because of this, because the clamp has to be flared open so far to clear the frame, and then brought back in, it just cracked all the paint right off. So I'm just gonna take these all off again, and I'm gonna parkerize them. I'm gonna blacken them, and they'll look correct. I believe they were painted, but I'm just gonna rip that all off. So here is the oil bath air cleaner. You can see on the inside here, it's all this copper mesh, brass mesh, and that's the filter. That's the air filter. And then this is the canister, and you can see it says oil level, so that goes in there. But first, this goes inside. It's like a baffle. So then this sandwich is on there. The air comes from underneath here, goes through that copper mesh, and then goes through, hits the oil, and then comes back through, and then goes through the intake into the carburetor. So this is gonna go here, and then what happens is there's a pipe here, a rubber hose, and that'll go, and this one's the wrong one. There's a variations of these. Obviously, this one's too short, so I'm gonna have to get a new one. So we're just gonna do this temporarily so we can take these, just to see. Wow, we're gonna put it on just to give you an idea of it. Here is the clamp. This is an original one. This goes on here, holds it together. Easy access to service it, add oil. We'll put it together just so you can have an idea what it looks like. Again, we need like 3 hands or 1 stomach. Again, like everything else, there's just enough room to get your fingers in. You get the idea of how it works. So we'll get this cleaned up. We'll have to order a new hose because it should go here and there. And I know there are variations of these because I have bought a few of them. So you can see it's kind of on the proper plane. This point here, we'll have to kind of push it back. We'll see if we can manipulate it a bit once we get those mounts parkerized. Coil's all done. Yeah, I've got a few zip ties. I know that's not factory, but I'd rather zip tie these lines away from the barrel, away from any heat source, so I don't have any electrical issues. But yeah, so let's continue on with. I think we'll probably start with do some of the wiring for the back light and give you an idea on this light. It's this 1 year only, Canadian spec only taillight. So here's the 1 year only, Canadian only taillight. So I'm not sure why Canada specified they wanted a different types of lights, but they did. So this one's really interesting. It's got glass lenses right here. And if you look closely, there's like almost like they sandblasted it. There's a round speck. Well, the other one has a smaller hole. And there is blackout covers for these also. But on the back side here, they actually thread on and off. So we're gonna have to, and then the inside part actually threads in again. And this is how the wiring, so we're gonna have to, pull this all apart and rewire all this. But there's just a little point here where your tail light goes on, your bulb goes on. So this is kind of neat how it threads into, this threads into that. And then this goes into the back side. All right. And then your lens goes on top of that, obviously. So first order of business with these is I'm gonna have to run the wiring through the fender, take off these two bolts at the back. By removing these, it allows, these are specific bolts, they're actually a carriage bolt. So round on the top, and then a square shaft goes into a square hole on the back. And now you can see the pivot. So that's to allow a rear wheel to be removed. So, they didn't have jacks in the World War II. So you had your rear stand. You lift this up, back wheel comes right out. Same with on the Canadian version on the Harley. They actually have a front stand. We'll be installing later, but it's the same idea. The front wheel goes up and allows you to pull the wheel off and service it if you had a flat tire or whatever the case may be. So here's the tube that we're putting the wiring through. And you can see how it follows the inside of the fender. Then it comes out, there's the hinge. So you can see we got that tubing almost right where we want. So we'll feed it a bit more. And there it is in that hole. And we'll just try and fish that out and pull it out so we can feed our taillight. So here we go. Pull this through. Leave just enough. So you got it's not tight or anything. And there we go. That's the taillight wiring. The taillight will go right here. And then at the same time, the rear stand catch goes in behind here and goes into those two holes. Didn't anticipate that you can't get this. Can't get that off. You got bolts on it. Okay, well, we'll just put it on loose so we can start assembling this, start running some wires. We'll have to do some wiring here. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to throw the battery into the bike and you know, just make sure I got power, and then try and figure out how this all works as far as because there's only 2 wires coming in, there's 2 different lights. There should be something that crosses over, but it doesn't look like it unless it's just grounded through here. But I got 1 wire coming from the stoplight and another coming from my ignition. So we're going to figure that out right away.